Hi, this is Dr. Christopher Maloney, Naturopathic Doctor in Augusta, Maine, talking today about stress. Now, stress is something, of course, I see with every patient. In fact, in primary care, standard doctors see about 80% of their patients are stress is a factor in about 80% of the situations that they see. Stress is something that we often think of as being insurmountable. It's something that we have no control over. And my answer to that is that no, stress is actually something very controllable, and it's a sign that is general in our society because we typically were trying to do too much of the stuff we hate to do. And if you spend your life doing something that you enjoy doing and experiencing, an increased exhilaration every day, it's very unlikely that you're gonna still experiencing good stress. But good stress isn't stress. Good stress is fun. Good stress is something that we then, we'll go stress ourselves out for weeks and weeks in our work, and so we can go have good stress on a vacation. So when people start talking about good stress and bad stress, I really think that they probably have a pessimistic view in the world, and we shouldn't listen to them too much. The idea is that your life does not need to be stressed in a way that is detrimental to your health. And what I would say about that is that when you take a rat, or you can't really put men and women on treadmills these days and see what happens when how long it takes to kill them on it. But you can take little poor lab rats and do it to them. When you take a lab rat and you give him no control over his life, when you just say, hey, we're going to shock you with an electric field and there's nothing that you can do about it, that rat is very likely to die very quickly. They have no control over the shocks. When you just give them an opportunity, some level of control over the shocks. So just say you shock them every time they eat. So every time they eat, they get shocked in the face really hard. But they have control over when that happens. That rat's more likely to experience a level of a longer life, less stress, doesn't die as soon. They have more control. The older concept of the assembly line worker, the person who's just doing something, and has no control over the effect on the assembly line, how fast things are coming down. They're just being given, they have no control. That person is under more stress than, say, a white collar worker who at least knows what's coming down. There's 10 people's jobs that are coming down the pike, but at least she's got some level of idea of what's going on and how do I manage my stress here. So we're really looking at an idea that you need to look at your stress and deal with it, and then not just deal with it now, but look forward on it and say, okay, where do I want to be? Making a goal about where you want your stress to be in 5 years, or maybe you could say, hey, I'm going to be here in 5 years, this is what it's going to be, but you made a conscious decision to do that, as opposed to what most people come in to see me and they say, I can't do anything. This is happening at home, and this is happening at work, and these are my kids, and this is my debt, and I'm like, wow, there's nothing you can do. And then they come to me and they say, hey, give me a pill. I've tried the drugs, they didn't work, so you must have some magical herb that's going to solve this problem. And my answer is, well, I do have a number of herbs that will address this issue, but we need to look at this whole picture. We need to deal with your lifestyle. I mean, there are times when I have recommended a spousectomy. I've said, look, you're not sleeping at night. I can knock you out. We can do stuff, but it's not going to solve this problem. You need your chronic insomnia is because you hate the person you're with, and you're just kind of, I don't know what, you're staying with them for whatever reason. You need to look at that. Either address, I'm not telling them to get rid of their spouse. I'm saying you need to deal with the way you're dealing with your spouse. And I've had various cases, some cases where people say, hey, we're done. But I've other cases where people looked at that and said, wait a second, this is not acceptable. And I want this, and I want this, and I want this from this person, and that would be acceptable. And they're back together. They're together. It's working for them. And that's incredibly helpful, because then the home life is not as stressful. They go to work and they actually like to come home, as opposed to other people who are basically working and they say, well, I'm stressed at work. I'm like, well, you're working till 8, 9 o'clock at night, even when there's not a big load of stuff to do. You're avoiding home. So we look at the big picture, and you say, well, what am I doing now that's making me crazy, and what am I going to be in 5 to 10 years? And I also make people turn around and say, your life right now is survival. You're spending all your life doing just surviving. And what I want you to do is to start thinking about what you want to do in your life. What are you going to do? What do you want? So often people say, well, I don't know what I want. I want a vacation. Like, we're doing what? Going where? Oh, I don't know, I go to Hawaii. And like, do you like Hawaii? Do you like hot? No, I hate that. Okay, what would you really like to do? Oh, I would like, suddenly we start talking about where they'd like to be. And so often they have gone into kind of a survival mode. My life basically, let's say basically my life is basically sucky. It's going to continue to suck. And I feel depressed, so give me something for that. And say, well, if your life is terrible, it's likely that it's going to continue to be terrible unless you do something. And although I would recommend, I can still give you something for depression, let's think about that for 3 to 6 months, and then let's look out a year ahead and say, what are you going to be doing? So stress is manageable. You can deal with this, and you need to deal with it because it's really going to affect, if you look at the big models, people who have uncontrolled stress are not going to live as long as people who have controlled stress. And if you're doing a ton of really good things for your health, I'm eating perfectly and I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm like, that's great. But if you're under chronic uncontrolled stress, that's actually going to pull you're going to lose a couple of years at this end, no matter what you're doing. So I really look at stress as being something that we have to address on a given, pretty much across the board if people are bringing it up and dealing with it. And if they don't have stress, then I always applaud them and I say, hey, you have done a great job of managing your life and doing what you need to do. And there are, unbelievable, a lot of people who are actually doing that. They're actually managing their stress, they're taking care of it, they're having a really great life. Even in this great hectic world that we've got right now. So I really would encourage each one of you to think about managing your stress, and if you need some help doing that, find somebody who's really good at that. They may have various degrees or whatever, but you need somebody who's going to sit down and help you figure out what you want to do and where you want to be in your life. This is Dr. Christopher Maloney, Naturopathic Doctor in Augusta, Maine, talking about stress. Thank you.